there's a lot more substance to the notion and even the measurement of authentic leadership. But if you unpack it, you would actually see that it encompasses a lot of attributes or qualities that are really important and valuable. And even if you can't objectively assess them on an attributional level, they're really useful to differentiate between better and worse leaders. But they actually depart quite a bit of the mainstream notion of authenticity. When people think about just being myself, authenticity in the mainstream, they think about the traps that I comment on or highlight in the book, like don't worry about what people think of you, just be true to your values no matter what, bring your whole self to work, and always be honest with others and yourself. Certain aspects of those kind of traps or mantras are still present in the concept of authentic leadership. So, for example, consistency between what you say and what you do is there. Self-awareness, which is a prerequisite for being honest with yourself, is there. But actually, a lot of things are not present in the mainstream notion of authenticity. So authentic leadership is a lot about integrity. Integrity, you can't have integrity unless there is an empathetic moral orientation that focuses leaders or individuals on how other people feel and think, you know? Authentic leadership is by definition not as egocentric or self-centered as the mainstream, and I would argue, narcissistic, diluted view of authenticity. I guess even if we talk about charisma, right? People tend to find it a positive. We know it's a really, really strong enabler of leadership emergence, but in the end is neither inherently good or bad. You know, if you're an ethical and competent leader, please be as charismatic as you can so that you can influence others, shape beliefs, and change society for the better. But if you're a psychopath or a crooked, unethical, or incompetent leader, my best hope is that you have zero charisma so that you are not effective, you know? Again, yeah. I'm sure we agree on this one. It's not that controversial. If
Indeed.
You think about it.
Yeah, I mean, charisma, again, is another one of these examples, isn't it? Where, you know, it's perceived by the majority as a good thing, even for leadership. But actually, it can also go off the rails quite easily as well.
There are benefits in adjusting your behavior to others and paying attention to how people perceive you. But if you are a blatant, artificial, you know, if you're a chameleon and you tell, even in your average workplace, to use your expression, you tell somebody one thing and then another something, you just tell people what they want to hear, and you're blatantly deceiving others and faking it all the time, you will be punished for it. You will be found out, you know? But again, going back to the other extreme, there's a really interesting line of research now called the a-hole factor in authenticity and even authentic leaders. Like, sometimes people engage in such blatant, rude and obnoxious behavior to be seen as authentic. And actually, it might work. Politics, we have a lot of examples, right? It might work because people are so suspicious now and so distrusting of the political class, let's say. There's a reason why at some point, you know, an excess of political skills make you a politician, and politician has a bad connotation, right, in an organization.
I don't know about the whole, like, bring your whole self to work. I think from a leadership perspective, I think it's naive not to expect people's outside lives not to affect their work lives.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, a lot of leaders get really quite cross about that sort of thing. Is, oh, well, you know, you should leave your feelings at the door, that whole sort of mindset, which is just totally unrealistic and unfair to everyone.
Yeah.
But I also think, like, if you try and hide, so let's say, take the sexist example, right? Like, if you obviously you're not going to be like, yeah, I'm a sexist, it's all good, yeah, I fit in here, right? You're going to try and hide that, aren't you? Because socially that's not acceptable, and nor should it be. But sooner or later, that's going to come out. Like something you'll do, you know, in the heat of the moment, or subconsciously, or just a pattern of behavior over time, people are going to realize.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, right? I think if you actually are that clear and you know it's wrong, and the environment, basically, the culture is actually focused on sanctioning bad behavior as opposed to policing what people truly think, I think you probably might not come out. And I think there's a lot of that, you know, has worked for a while. You know, maybe with sexism is a bit strong, with racism is strong. But if you think like political beliefs, it becomes a lot kind of maybe more relatable. I mean, it's easier when you say, I used to like chocolate ice cream and now I don't. But when it comes to like people or deep kind of political issues that kind of underpin our core beliefs, it's very taxing. And the older we are, the less likely we are, the less flexible we are, and the more rigid we are on these matters.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned Tony Blair, like his generation of politicians, and George W. Bush as well. Like at the time, if you told me in, you know, give it 10, 20 years and you'll be wishing they were still there, would never have believed that, but it's true.
That's a different, you know, I think, you know, it might be grass is, you know, always greener elsewhere. It might be general nostalgia, but it might also be, to finish on a really high note, that everything gets worse in every single area. You know, it's like,
I don't want to believe that.
You know, even back to music, right? It's like, it's hard to think that in 100 years' time, you look back at Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran and say, wow, that was so complex and intellectual. But that's what happens right now. You know, jazz music was the house music in the 1950s. And Mozart was sort of like house music of the 1850s or 70s, 80s or whatever, right? So it might be that there's a general deterioration of everything, or that we just, you know, are nostalgic, or that we're just getting old.